Hello, welcome back to Online Fashion Workshop. After completing the basic bodies, we are back to drape the basic skirt. We will start draping a basic skirt and turn it into a pattern. We only need to use the lower body of the dress form now. We already have our waistline tape as our reference. We only need to tape for center front, hip line, and the center back. Now I am going to tape the hip line. We start taping from the center front line, from the waist down. Next, taping the side seam. It is not must do since we have a very apparent rolled stitch on our sides, but I just add that too. Now we can move on to center back seam. And after finishing our vertical lines, now we can add our hip line. Before we tape our hip line, we must locate it properly. It is usually between 7 to 9 inches below our waistline. Everyone has a different shape, right? But basically, the highest point of our hip from the back is our hip line. Let's look at it now. This is our highest point, which hits this area on our side. And if I locate this, pin this there, and measure it, it says 7 inch long, which makes about 17 or 18 centimeters. It's 18 centimeters. So I go ahead and leave the pin there. Now let's measure our 7 inches at the center front. It is right here, pin there too. Now let's locate the center back in 7 inches here and pin it. So our line should hit these pins horizontally from center front, side, and center back. So I will tape the hip line now, starting from the center front to side. Keep your eyes on it and try to have a straight line. It is harder for me because I'm trying to do it in front of the camera and it's not exactly straight in front of me. But you will pay attention to make it straight. Sometimes it's challenging and takes other tapes off, but you can correct it later. Let's cut this. Here. Okay, I'm taking off the pins and from the center front too. So now I can go ahead and start draping the skirt. On our center front, we already pressed 1 inch in and ironed it and drawn our hip line on my muslin as well. So my muslin fabric for the front skirt draping is ready. We We align our hip line first and keep our center front line vertical at the same time, and we pin starting from the hip line, the center front. Next, we pin on our waistline at the center front. And after pinning the center fronts, we keep the hip line aligned and move it to the side, and we pin it at the side seam at the hip line. So next, be careful to stay on straight grain line on the side seam. Keep the fabric straight and brush your hand from hip line toward the waistline, and stop and pin at the waist. And again, on the side seam, straight line down at the bottom of the skirt and pin there too. And we can pin at the center front as well. Pin right here. So as you see, we have a big amount of fabric to take into darts in here, but we can have it as one big dart like this, or divide them into two darts. Depends on how you prefer it and the look you are creating. As a fit wise, two darts have a better fit on the skirts. You can have three as well if you want, but we are draping a basic skirt pattern, and you better have two darts for your basic skirt pattern, and you can eliminate it later if you want. It depends on your design, but it's good to have the two darts for the basic skirt pattern. First dart is longer than the second dart on basic skirt, so ideally the first dart would align with the princess line, which mostly hits across our apex line straight down. In most of dress forms, you will have that seam like this one. Measure the first dart on our waist from center front. And let's see, if I measure it from center front and the princess line, it's about 3 inches. It's about 7.5 or 7 centimeters. So I already can feel the princess seam in here, so I make the mark for that line for the first dart. I mean, try to divide into one big and one small darts. You can play with this. It is not a very rigid rules, inches by inches. Of course, I will share more info while we move forward, but I like you to play and not be scared to touch it and manipulate. Maybe on your dress form, these numbers are not accurate and it's wrong and it won't look its best. Let's close the first dart. I divided now. The first one is here, and I pin the first dart, and we'll take the rest into the second dart. Scatter here, yeah, this is nice, and I will pin it here too. So side seam are not pulled or stretched and still is pretty fitted around the waist. I am going to mark the darts from where I pinned, right side to side. So those are opening of the darts. You can put numbers on them. It will make it easier when you're transferring to paper. You can see the darts. And when I fold this dart, I can see where it ends. So I make a little mark here, just to put a little dart. Same on the first dart. Without pulling too much, you can see where it ends and make a little mark there too. And I'm just gonna put a circle around it so I can see it better. Now let's close the darts. Unpin the first dart and take it from the pencil marked places and close the first one. Meet the pencil marked places, the first one, and pin right there, and pin along the way it ends, where it ends, maybe the second or third pin if you need. And let's try to close the second one and unpin. Take side to the side. Pin the second one too. And there's another one in here. Maybe the third one. So I can see how it looks when the darts are closed. And then another one I'm going to put toward the end of the first dart in here. Okay, now it looks good. Now after closing the darts, I am going to cut along the waistline, the excess fabric, and slash around the waist and control the fit again. Let's cut this extra fabric so I can see if it looks nice. Maybe just a little slash in the here, doesn't need much. Another one in here, and now control and check the fit. Looks good. Now let's take a look at on the side seam. Our skirt, even the fitted skirt we have, should not be too tight around the hip line. No matter what fabric we are using, it won't look a good fit if it is too tight around the hip line. You need more room when you have a woven fabric, maybe, and less room for the stretchy fabrics. But your body moves, so you need a little bit of room around the hip line so it doesn't crease and stretch around your hip area. So I will show you how can we give that room. We first start with the marking our closest fit on side seam of the skirt. Let's mark all the way down. So we have our side seam on straight grain, crossing our hip line, which is on cross grain. And next we mark the T on the waist and side seam point. And we continue marking our waistline. mark the waistline and cross over the dart. Make it more visible if needed. And again, cross over the first dart too. And finish it on center front point. Next, mark the darts. Cross line over the darts closure as needed, so we can see the length. Just like that. Now let's take a look. The front of the skirt draped, and we continue with the back before making any changes on the side seam. So I am holding the muslin fabric for draping the basic skirt back piece. Align the hip line and align the vertical center back. It should meet the hip line as well. And pin at the point of hip line and the center back when the lines are vertical and horizontal matching, and the waistline. Pin on the waistline too. Now it's time to do the hip line toward this side seam. We pin it right there as well. And so I won't pin the bottom of my skirt on the center back because my dress form has a curved hip, as you see, and I'm going to leave it hanging straight and keep my eyes on it once in a while to see if it's hanging straight. I will brush my hand toward this waistline to locate the sides and waistline and pin it right there. Let's before locate our back darts and put 2 more pins on the side seam, so when we take our back darts it doesn't stretch this side seam. We know it's gonna stand on the straight grain. And we need more align the side toward the bottom of the skirt. Now let's cut if there is too much fabric on the side seam. But while we cut, let's leave at least 2 inches on the side because we will modify the side later. Now let's start cutting. I'm just gonna leave somewhere around 2 inches. Now locating our darts on the back, let's smooth the fabric from the center back toward the side and locate your princess line seam on your dress form. This is the princess line on the dress form. If you don't have those seams on your dress form, we can measure it, so I can give you a number. It's about 3 inches between center back toward side seam. It is 7 centimeters. So I will mark our 7 centimeters or 3 inches out, and I want to divide the excess fabric on the waistline into 2 darts. I like to play and see how it looks first. Just play with it and see. The first one would be little wider. The first one would be a little wider and longer, and the second one should be smaller, and they both don't hit the hip line. So I will pin the first dart that I located, and like that, and pin the second one, which is a smaller dart, pin right here, and let's measure from the side seam toward the center back. The distance between side to the dart is about 2 inches. And between two darts, the distance between two darts, about 1.5 inch. This part was 3 inches away from the center back. So now let's mark the darts in the back. The first pin, let's mark the first dart, both sides of the pins, and the length is about here. Let's put a circle. And the second dart, this side of the pin, mark, and the other side of the pin too, and it's about right here. Circle it, and let's measure. So the first dart, the length is about 6 inches, and the second dart is about 5 inches. So now it's time to close our darts. Take off the pins and let's close this. You can close the darts toward the sides. Let's close the first one and then pin. And the second one unpin, open, match the pencil marks and close it again. After closing the darts, now it's time to cut excess fabric on waistline and release tensions. Next, we mark the side seam all the way from the waistline to the bottom of the skirt, and we mark the waistline and we cross over the darts closures. We continue as we did at the front of the skirt. We repeat all the steps. Now we can unpin the side seams. And to the front skirt, we add about 1/2 inch to the front skirt on side seam and the hip line point. We measure that 1/2 inch and we mark it. And now we add the same amount, 1/2 inch, to the back skirt on side and hip line point. Now let's unpin and take the sides off. The waist should be at the 0 point as original before. And we pin it right there. And the hip line and the side seam point, we move it to that 1/2 inch extension. And we pin it right there. As we see, we already have a little room around the hip area, and we take the front piece and we fold it this time and place it on the back skirt piece. And in the waist area, it should be no room, no extra extension, just a 0 point as it was before. And we place the fold part on each other and pin it. And in the hip line, we fold from that extension 1/2 inch and we place it on the extension of the backside line and place it on each other, and we pin from there. Now we can see from 0 point to the 1/2 inch extension part, there are little bit more room around the side area. That is okay, that's natural. We can go over it when we are doing the patterns if we need to clean it or make it less than that. We can take that part out or make it closer. And on the side seam toward the bottom of the skirt, we don't leave it all the way open so it doesn't become like an A-line skirt. We just take the sides as it was before and close it. We're basically trying to see the silhouette after finishing this and see how it looks. When I transfer it to the pattern, we're probably going to take sides a little bit into, so toward the bottom of the skirt is kind of goes inward instead of sticking out. And now let's pin more and look at the end result. Now we have the side seam placed on each other, and it looks pretty clean and nice. It has a little bit more room, and now it's time to mark them. You can take another color pencil so you will know this is your new lines, and you will have the original line in the normal pencil color and the new lines in a different pencil color, so you will have the both side. And if you need to later to make it tighter when you transfer it to the dotted paper and the pattern, you can take it from the. Now that we finished our skirt, I wanted to attach the bodies to the skirt and match the dart lines together. And I'm gonna unpin and try to move the dart of the bodies to the skirt dart. There is not much difference, just a little bit, and I can take it later and from the pattern. The slight difference is okay. We can clean it in the pattern and attach the bodies and the skirt from the waist like it's sewn together, so we can see how it looks. So that line is continuous on the side seam too. Now the back darts, we pin them together. Now it's done. We made it through. I hope you enjoyed this video and it helps with your drapings. Thank you for watching Online Fashion Workshop. Cheers!